If I told you that a US Senate candidate is now blaming his election loss on a random van that supposedly showed up in Detroit with secret ballots, well, you'd probably want to see the video. So here it is.
It so happened that 5:30 in the morning we were winning. A van in Detroit showed up with ballots. We ended up losing that thing by about 17,000 votes.
That's Mike Rogers, claiming a mystery van rolled up with tens of thousands of ballots and somehow swung the results of the 2024 election. And this is So What Michigan, where we call out the BS before some folks decide it's the truth. Here are the facts. Mike Rogers lost to Alyssa Slotkin by more than 19,000 votes last year and never said a word about election fraud at the time. 1 year later, now that he's back on the campaign trail and making another run for US Senate, Rogers is floating this van story that doesn't match what actually happened. In reality, Detroit always processes tons of absentee ballots at Huntington Place, legally, transparently, and often into the early morning. Ballots from drop boxes and same-day registrations get delivered overnight. It isn't a scandal, it's literally the process. Election officials say what Rogers is describing is routine, and that his version of events is even more ridiculous than the lies that Trump tried to push off on voters after he lost the election in 2020. But here's what makes Rogers' story even more ridiculous. In that same 2024 election, Republicans won plenty of races. Trump won Michigan. Republicans retained control of the U.S. House and flipped the U.S. Senate. They even flipped the Michigan House. So if this election was somehow rigged, it must have been the weirdest rigging ever. One that magically spared every other Republican except Mike Rogers. And this supposed ballot dump that flipped this race? That didn't even come from Detroit. Slotkin's lead did grow when legally counted absentee ballots were added to the total overnight, but that was reportedly in Kalamazoo County, and it was exactly as expected. Again, boring reality beats viral lie. But here's the real kicker. Rogers used to condemn this type of bull. In an op-ed for the Washington Post, he labeled stolen 2020 election claims as conspiracy and hearsay, and said that denying certified results without proof was an abdication of our responsibility to the Constitution. Now, for whatever reason, Rogers is doing it himself. And that raises some obvious questions about whether Rogers would be willing to accept the results of the next election in 2026. So what? Well, if you win control of Congress, flip the state house, re-elect Trump, and still think the election was rigged by Democrats just to spite you, that's not election fraud. That's ego. Detroit voters did nothing wrong. The count was public. The results were certified. And the only thing that swung this race was math. Hit follow. I'll keep calling out Michigan's political delusions before they spread.